Chapter 1. The Perfect Lie. They say betrayal hurts most when it comes from those closest to you. I used to think that was just a cliché. Until I found myself staring at an email titled, "Don't Let Josh Find Out." And everything I thought I knew about love, family, and trust shattered in a single heartbeat. 3 years ago, my life looked like something out of a mid-budget Hallmark movie. I was 28, working as a senior developer at a solid tech company. Not flashy but stable. The kind of job with health benefits and 401k matching. The kind your parents brag about at dinner parties. I just bought a house with 2 bedrooms and enough yard to build a deck someday. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. Then I met Megan. She was a pediatric nurse with this easy laugh and the kind of eyes that made people feel safe. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming party. I'd just come in from a cigarette break and she was laughing at a story about a toddler who tried to flush an iPad down a hospital toilet. Her passion for her job lit up every room she entered. And me? I was hooked. 1 year later I proposed. Spent 2 months' salary on the ring. Platinum band. 2.1 carats. I wasn't trying to impress her, I just wanted to honor her. We got married at her parents' church, small ceremony, 50 guests. It was the happiest day of my life. And in the background? My little brother, Ed. 4 years younger, better looking, more charming, and, according to our mother, the sensitive artistic soul. He was always Mom's favorite. While I was fixing cars with Dad and building websites, Ed was dropping out of jobs and charming his way out of responsibility. The golden child who never did wrong even when he clearly did. Still, I loved him. I trusted him. That trust led me to get him a job at my company. Sales rep. I vouched for him. Trained him myself. I even prepped him for client calls while working overtime on a huge hospital contract. Because that's what big brothers do, right? They believe in you even when you haven't earned it. Megan thought it was sweet. She even said it was nice that we were finally bonding like real brothers. At the time I thought I had it all. A steady career. A woman I loved. A house we were turning into a home. My biggest worry was that I was working too much. Missing Sunday pancakes, pushing back date nights. But it was temporary, I told myself. The project I was leading would change our lives. It did. Just not in the way I imagined. Around that time Megan's shifts started changing. She began hanging out more with a new nurse friend, Alexis. There were more girls' nights out. More missing cash withdrawals on our statements. Fewer kisses at the door. And her smile, God, her smile, it stopped reaching her eyes. Then came the morning sickness. At first I was excited. Nervous but excited. We talked about kids. But the second I suggested it might be pregnancy, she panicked. Scheduled a doctor's appointment. Didn't want me there. I should have known then. But I was still clinging to trust. Until that Thursday afternoon. I was looking for an email on our shared desktop when I saw her inbox open. The subject line caught my eye like a slap to the face. Don't let Josh find out. And in that moment, my entire world narrowed down to a single decision. Do I respect her privacy? Or open the door to something I won't be able to unsee? Chapter 2. The Unforgivable Thread. My hands were trembling as I clicked on that email. I told myself it was probably nothing, maybe a surprise birthday plan, a medical thing, anything but what it looked like. But the subject line wasn't lying. The thread ran 3 months deep. Back and forths between my wife and my own mother. At first the words were vague. Little things like, make sure you stick to the shift excuse, or, Ed said you got too close last time. I read faster trying to make sense of the code. Then came the part that shattered everything. A line from my mom. Frank plays 18 holes every Thursday, you'll have at least 4 hours alone. She was offering them her house. My childhood home. As a meeting place. So my brother could sleep with my wife without anyone knowing. That's when I realized this wasn't an affair. It was an operation. Emails detailed excuses, schedules, how to manipulate me. There was even a shared calendar tracking when I'd be at the office or out late due to project deadlines. They had mapped my entire life. And I was the idiot giving up sleep and sanity working 70-hour weeks to build a future for my wife and the family I thought we were growing. Meanwhile she was building something else with him. The last message was dated just 2 days ago. Megan panicking about a positive pregnancy test. Mom replying, it doesn't matter. Josh will believe it's his. He wants a family. Let him. Let him. That's what I was to them. A stable fallback. A safety net. A paycheck. Not a person. Not a husband. Not a son. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there staring at the screen, the silence in our house suddenly deafening. Every laugh we shared, every plan we made, every dinner I cooked while she was on call, it all twisted into a grotesque performance. And I was the only one who didn't know it was theater. I printed the emails. Saved them to a flash drive. Called my boss, Chester, who answered on the second ring. You need a lawyer, he said the moment I told him. Don't confront them yet. We'll handle this smart. Chester knew someone. A woman named Sarah Jacobson. Divorce attorney. He dialed her right there while I sat in my kitchen, listening like a ghost. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just about a broken marriage. It was about survival. About reclaiming my life before they tried to rip it from my hands completely. By the time Megan came home that night, I had a folder of legal advice, a separate bank account, and a mask of normalcy so tight it made my skin itch. She kissed my cheek, told me about a fake emergency at the hospital, and I smiled, because I knew exactly where she had been. Chapter 3, Dinner for the Damned. The days leading up to the dinner felt like walking through a dream I desperately wanted to wake up from. Megan laughed like nothing had changed. She kissed me on the cheek when I left for work. She wore the necklace my mother gave her, the one meant for my future wife. The irony was suffocating. But I played my part. I smiled. I asked about her shifts. I even watched our Thursday night show beside her on the couch. Meanwhile, I was freezing joint credit cards, setting up security cameras, and transferring our savings. Everything Sarah, my attorney, had advised. The house was mine, bought before marriage, and I intended to keep it that way. I planned the dinner as carefully as they had planned their lies. Dad was the only one I called directly. Got some good news to share, I told him, and he sounded genuinely happy. He offered to host, but I insisted. I wanted them all on my turf, in the home they had stained with deceit. Megan looked uneasy when I told her Ed and my parents were invited. Her eyes flicked up from her phone, smile a little too forced. They'll be thrilled, she said, then excused herself to the bedroom. I knew she was texting Ed. Probably my mom too. I could picture it, coordinated stories, timelines rehearsed like a stage play. They had no idea the script had already been rewritten. Friday morning, I picked up the manila envelope. Inside were the divorce papers. False date. Infidelity proven. Megan would get nothing. I also printed the email thread. Dozens of pages. Every lie, every plan, every whisper they thought I'd never hear. I tucked it into a second envelope, for my father. Then just before dinner, I picked up takeout from an upscale Italian place. No way I was cooking. This wasn't a celebration. It was a reckoning. The table was set. Candles lit. Cameras rolling. And I waited. Mom arrived first, all fake cheer and tight hugs. "Where's Megan?" she asked immediately. "Upstairs," I said. Ed showed up last. 6:45. That smug grin on his face like he owned the world. He slapped my back with that same careless energy he'd carried since we were kids. Megan descended the stairs in the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. The final insult. We sat. We ate. I made small talk about the weather and work and Dad's golf game. Megan barely touched her food. Mom kept stealing glances. Ed looked bored like he couldn't wait to leave. Then Dad raised his glass. "So Josh, what's the good news?" I smiled. Reached under the table. Pulled out the envelope. "Actually," I said, "I do have something to share." I slid the envelope toward Megan. Her fingers hesitated on the flap. And when she opened it, the last illusion shattered. Chapter 4, The Breaking Point. Megan stared at the envelope like it might explode. She didn't open it right away. Just sat there, pale and motionless, while the weight of silence pressed down on the room like a lead blanket. "What is this?" she finally whispered. I kept my voice steady. "Divorce papers." Ed blinked. My mom gasped. Megan's hand trembled as she pulled the papers out, her eyes scanning the bold letters at the top. Her lips parted, but no sound came. "I know," I said quietly. "About you and Ed. About the baby. About the emails." The reaction was instant. Mom stood up like she'd been slapped. "Josh, what are you? How dare you?" I reached for the second envelope and handed it to Dad. "These are emails between Megan and Mom. Planning the affair. Lying to me. Using your house as their meeting place." Dad opened the folder, his brows furrowed as he read the first few pages. His hands began to shake. Ed pushed back from the table, knocking over his chair. "You went through her email? That's illegal." I stood, not raising my voice, just meeting his eyes. "You got my wife pregnant, Ed." "I'd say that's a bigger issue than violating her inbox." Megan was crying now, a soft, broken sound. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I didn't mean." "You didn't mean to get caught," I cut in. Then I turned to Mom. "And you coached her. Covered for her. Lied to me. For months." She tried to reach for Dad's hand, but he pulled away. "Catherine," he said, his voice low and flat. "Is this true?" Mom's voice cracked. "I was just trying to protect the family. Ed made a mistake. Josh was always so busy." "Stop," Dad said. Ed laughed bitterly. "Josh is overreacting. Megan and I just connected. You weren't there for her. I was. Things happen. That's when I lost it." I walked around the table and punched him. Right in the face. A satisfying crack echoed through the room. Blood poured from his nose as he stumbled back, knocking over a side table. Mom screamed. Megan sobbed. Dad didn't move. "You hit me. You're insane." Ed shouted, cradling his nose. "You're lucky that's all I did," I said through gritted teeth. Dad finally stood, towering over all of us. "Get out. Now." Ed glared, blood dripping down his shirt. "This isn't over." I turned to Megan. I want a paternity test. And regardless of the result, we're done. She didn't fight me. She just cried harder. I handed Dad a cashier's check for $10,000, the money I knew he'd loaned Ed. Before the rest of this falls apart, you should get something back. He stared at it. Son, I'm sorry. I didn't know. For the first time that night, I felt the smallest sliver of something like peace. Not relief. Not healing. Just clarity. And then Megan whispered something I'll never forget. But what if the baby is yours? Chapter 5. Not my burden anymore. Her words hung in the air like a toxic fog. But what if the baby is yours? There was a time when that sentence would have unraveled me. When the thought of being a father, especially to a child I thought was born from love, would have tethered me to her even after everything. But that night, I felt nothing. Just a tired, hollow ache in my chest. Like I'd already buried the version of myself who would have cared. I looked at her and said, then I'll do what's right. But I won't stay married to a liar. Megan broke down completely after that, sobbing into her hands. Mom tried to console her, but Dad had had enough. He stood jaw clenched. Get your coat, Catherine. We're leaving. Frank, please? No. You broke our son. You helped them betray him and you called it protecting family. You and Ed can live with your choices. I'm done. That was the last night I ever spoke to my mother. Megan moved out the next day. I changed the locks. The paternity test came back 2 weeks later. The child wasn't mine. In a strange, cruel way, it was a relief. No messy custody battles. No guilt. Just a clean break. The assault charge Ed filed? It came through 2 months later. Misdemeanor. $500 fine. Sarah, my lawyer, said it could have been worse, but I didn't care. Worth every cent. Dad called me that night. Told me he'd already rewritten his will. Ed was cut out completely. When Mom found out, she had a meltdown and threatened divorce. Dad told her she was free to go. She didn't. Probably because without him, she'd have nothing. Last I heard, he took a plea deal for embezzling money from the company. 18 months in prison. I didn't visit. I didn't write. He made his bed. Megan moved back to her hometown with the baby. Her religious parents eventually took her in, barely. I heard she cried to them about how everything fell apart. But she left out the part where she burned it all down herself. As for me, I rebuilt. I got promoted to director. Managed a team of 15. Bought a rental property and started stacking cash. Spent weekends turning the house into something new. Tore out the old bathroom. Painted over the rooms she decorated. Each renovation was a quiet act of healing. I hired a trainer. Ran a half marathon. Grew a little stronger. A little sharper. A little more cautious. People kept asking when I'd start dating again. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But I was no longer afraid of being alone. 6 months after the fallout, Mom tried to reach me. Asked to meet at a diner. I agreed mostly out of curiosity. She brought Megan. And the baby. They were both a mess. Mom looked worn, her nails chipped, her purse faded. Megan looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. The baby slept beside her in a carrier, innocent in all of this. I should have felt something. Instead, I listened as they told me Ed had walked out. No money. No support. He drank, hit her, disappeared. Mom begged me to help. Bail him out. Take them in. Family helps family, she said. I left them a card to a women's shelter. Then walked out of that diner and never looked back. And in that moment, I realized I had survived the worst thing 3 people I loved could do to me. And I wasn't just standing. I was rising.